Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We are welcoming this afternoon Marieke Vogt on my right and Anne Stevens from the not-for-profit association Free River Fund. We had the pleasure to welcome you last year, but you are coming here to present again this not-for-profit and the actions and what you are doing. Marieke, I think you're going to be starting. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. I'm Marieke from the Free Rivers Fund. We are giving... The Free Rivers Fund is giving funding to grassroots river conservation projects. And last year we came here and we're talking about how this works and what our work is, what we're doing. And then we walked around the show and found out that a lot of people, even from the paddling community, don't really know what the problem is about dams. So we decided to this year talk about free-flowing rivers, about dams, and about what the problem is. So I'll give an introduction, and then Anne will talk about the main problem and how we are part of the solution. Okay, what's a healthy river? Meaning how should a river actually be in a natural or near natural state? Rivers are a continuum. They flow from the mountains to the sea, and on their way they're transporting sediments and nutrients, not only the minerals from the mountains, but also organic material, as you can also see on this picture. Rivers are also a network, so life is not only traveling downstream, as I always thought, but it's also traveling upstream. And that's not only the fishes, but that's all sorts of life. And normally rivers are colder and flow faster in the higher regions, in the mountains. And as you go down, they get slower and warmer, obviously. So you have different ecosystems along the river. It's not all the same. And last, as you can also see on the picture, rivers need a bit of space. So how do we benefit from rivers? They provide us with clean water. So for example, if we have sewage and after the sewage treatment plant the water goes back into the river, it's kind of almost clean, but the river ecosystem does the rest of the work. So this is very important. Very often they recharge the groundwater. It can also be the other way around. And rivers are needed for, I'm just naming a lot of things we need rivers for irrigation, then for drinking water for animals, all sorts of animals, including cattle. Obviously, as we all know, we need it for water sports, sports on the river or in the river, but also like along the river. For example, cycling path is much nicer when it's next to a river than when it's just somewhere. What maybe a lot of people are not so aware of, we also need it for cooling, for industry. For example, nuclear power plants need cooling water. This word is almost English. They regulate microclimate, which is, for example, important in bigger cities or cities that heat up now with climate change. It becomes more and more important that we have cooling corridors there that are often provided by rivers, because then it's cooler than without water. In Vienna, for example, so we are from Austria, in Vienna there's a project now opening up all the streams that had been put underground. And fishing in Austria, where we live, this is mainly a sport, but in other regions of the world, this is something that people depend on for making a living. And rivers also protect us from floods when they have a bit of space and enough flow, like natural flow, so that they can manage their sediment themselves.
Donc un premier résumé de la situation, c'est le constat, ces rivières de montagne notamment, un rappel de leur utilité, de leur importance pour nous. D'abord parce que, eh bien, il y a évidemment le fait qu'elles emmènent un certain nombre de sédiments avec toute une vie aquatique et des écosystèmes qui sont différents en fonction des altitudes, en fonction des températures. Donc une évolution de ces rivières dans le cours de leur descente de la montagne à la mer. Et puis un rappel que nous fait Marieke sur les différents aspects de la rivière, bien évidemment l'eau potable, bien évidemment l'irrigation, la nourriture, enfin pour les bêtes, mais également des choses comme l'aspect récréatif ou le sport qui nous sert également, une régulation thermique. Enfin, on rappelle donc tous les avantages, tous les points qui sont liés à ces rivières que cette association défend.
Right. So now what happens to a river if we put a dam into it? Two very obvious things. The first thing is the dam interrupts the flow. And very often, because the dam is there to store water or to divert water, it means that after the dam there's very little water in the stream. So we brought an illustration with us. There's a lot of aspects on this picture on what the problem with dams or hydropower is, and I will just explain a few of them. So like in the top left corner, you can see there's a dam, and it stops the water, and with the water it also stops the transport of sediment, which first of all leads to, this sediment is missing after the dam. And this has all sorts of consequences. One is that the river carves deeper into its bed downstream. And for example, this lowers the groundwater table, or can lower the groundwater table, which then again affects the people downstream, because groundwater is normally used as drinking water. So they have to dig deeper, and this is causing problems. Also, it can affect plants, as trees, for example, often reach down even to the groundwater, and if the table goes lower, it can provide, dry stress. Right. Then the next thing is, after the dam, there's often residual flow, so less water in the riverbed than it should be. So one of the consequences is that the water is warmer because there's less cool water flowing over the warm rocks. So the water temperature rises, and this affects the ecosystem because it means higher temperature in general, but also less oxygen, for example. So the ecosystem changes, and normally it doesn't get better, it gets worse and means a loss of biodiversity. Also, especially in the mountains, you have sediment coming in from the sides, like landslides or rockfall, and this all ends up in the riverbed. And if you then don't have the power from the water to transport everything away, it means that floods get more dangerous, because then once you get a flood, all the rocks that has been piling up in the riverbed get transported away once, so you get a muddy something. So what communities do, we know this from the Alps, we live in the Alps, is they have to dig it out with diggers, which costs money. Best case, they can use it as construction material, but it also causes things like lorry traffic, for example, and this again causes air pollution and noise and everything. So it's quite a long chain of things that is caused by a dam. Yeah, and maybe the last thing I want to mention is that a standing water body is emitting a lot more methane than a flowing river, which you can see top right corner. And methane is a greenhouse gas, And often this even outweighs the advantage that you have, like with the hydropower, you have like a CO2 neutral electricity production. But then if you have a larger reservoir, it can mean that the methane emitted from the reservoir is more greenhouse gas than you're saving from the electricity you're producing with the hydropower plant. Yes, that's all I want to say. And I would hand it over to Anne.
Yeah, just before, un petit rappel en français de la situation, donc de ces barrages qui sont installés et qui ont évidemment une incidence dans une mécanique de cause-conséquence, cause and consequences of course, comme Marieke vient de très bien le décrire, avec plusieurs aspects. Évidemment, les sédiments qui ne peuvent plus s'écouler et circuler, ce qui affecte évidemment la végétation notamment, moins d'eau, puisque le barrage retient cette eau, donc une eau plus chaude, un lit de la rivière qui se comble et qu'on est obligé de nettoyer avec des moyens mécaniques. Donc on tombe dans des systèmes de causes-conséquences qui ne sont absolument pas positifs et qui impactent l'environnement tout entier.
Okay, hi, I'm Anna. I will now talk about the hydropower situation in Europe, and I brought this map. And on the map, every black dot, and you see some areas are just black because you can't even figure out the dots anymore, are existing hydropower dams, and all the red dots are planned hydropower dams. And yeah, I think the map kind of speaks for itself. The main problem in Europe is that we already have way too much. The expansion level is too high. The rivers are already very fragmented and very damaged, and still a huge wave of new projects is planned and proposed, especially around the Alps and the Balkans. And I will come back to the map later. I just quickly give you some numbers. There's more than 1 million river barriers in European rivers, and these barriers mean not only hydropower plants, it's dams, weirs, forts, everything. But the 1 million barriers means that Europe is actually has the most fragmented rivers on all of the planet. Yeah, and we saw on the map the black dots where the 21,387 existing hydropower plants, which is a lot, and the ones that are still in planning are almost 9,000 only in Europe. Yeah, and I brought a little fun fact. 28% of the planned hydropower plants are projected in nature reserves. So about a third is going to be built, if it happens, in like national park nature reserves, because apparently rivers do not belong to the protection of these reserves. And as a result of this, the migratory freshwater fish population in Europe has declined by 93% since the 70s, which is the biggest decline in species, freshwater species we have on all of the planet. It's the worst in Europe. And yeah, of course, this has many factors, but hydropower is the key driver of this, because the migratory species have to travel upstream and downstream, and if they can't repopulate. Yeah. So the next thing, I go back to the card so you can have another look. When I started to be involved in this topic, I have to admit, I thought we are in the European Union, we have laws. I kind of thought this is all in orders and there are environmental laws in place and this should be fine. Whatever they do might be necessary, I don't know. Turns out the EU actually has quite strong laws to protect rivers. One of them is the Water Framework Directive. And the Water Framework Directive has a non-deterioration principle, meaning whatever is planned to be built cannot deteriorate the water body. So if you want to build a hydropower plant, theoretically, the river has to be in the same state it had been before. Now, if you listen to Marieke, this is hardly possible to do that, to be honest. There will be deterioration in the river. And so the problem is that governments can ask for exemptions of this directive. And sadly, these exemptions have become the norm. By now, 53%, so over half of European water bodies are exempt from the law that is actually in place, which is too many and a bit weird. So but I told you all this because this is one of the reasons why normal people need to get active. Like, we actually have the laws in place, but we need to hold our own governments accountable to follow the laws. Like, it's on an EU level, it's already clear. We have too much hydropower, we have too many barriers, and it's clear we should protect the rivers we still have, but still they are asking for exemption and building and building and building. And I brought another fun fact. For example, in Austria, where we live, less than 1/3 of the proposed hydropower plants actually are in line with the framework directive. So 2/3 are not following the EU standard of the now proposed projects. And this is why we need people to start standing up for this and hold our governments accountable.
Voilà, Anne qui nous propose donc une carte qui se lit assez facilement. On voit bien que tout ce qui est noir, donc c'est ce qui existe déjà, le rouge étant les projets. On arrive à plus d'1 million de barrières sur les rivières, et on est dans une situation en Europe où on a des rivières qui sont extrêmement fragmentées, avec des situations très particulières, puisque 30% de ces fragmentations sont dans des aires protégées. Et puis surtout, ça a un impact bien évidemment sur la population migratoire des poissons, qui a chuté de 93%, 93% de chute de la migration des espèces. Ce sont des conséquences extrêmement importantes. Alors, Anne nous rappelle que nous sommes en Europe et que nous avons un certain nombre de directives qui sont censées protéger ou réguler l'installation de barrages ou de barrières. Mais apparemment, il y a énormément de dérogations. Et en fait, 2/3 des constructions aujourd'hui ne correspondent pas à la directive. Donc on est sur une loi qui est assez mal mise en œuvre au niveau des pays. Countries are not playing by the rules. Et chacun fait sa petite différence pour continuer de faire comme si de rien n'était.
Okay, and just a quick, for this presentation, I only concentrated on Europe, because we are in Europe right now, but of course it's a global problem. But there are so many other factors going on globally that this would have exploded this presentation, so I only talked about Europe. But of course it's a huge problem, and of course the Free Rivers Fund operates worldwide, so we are not only operating in Europe. And
you confirm that you could draw this map practically anywhere else in the world.
It's a bit different in the rest of the world. Roughly, you can divide it in like the global north or the western world and the global south. And particularly in Europe and the US, the problem is that there are already so many barriers. So everything else they're proposing is already too much. And mainly the problem in the global south is there are still rivers that are free-flowing, they are untouched, they have less existing plants. But on the other hand, there's a huge gold rush. There's so many proposed plans. It's unimaginable. It's unfathomable what's planned there. And on top, now you asked me. On top of that, the problem in the global south is that the people are way more directly affected by it than we are, because we can still live our lives if the river is running free or not. but a lot of people directly fish from the river. They directly depend on the river for drinking water, for irrigation, agriculture, and the United Nations has estimated that about 80 million people right now are displaced by hydropower. Because their valleys are flooded, or wherever they live, they just cannot sustain their way of living anymore because the hydropower took away their standard of living.
Oui, Anne nous confirme que ce dont on parle aujourd'hui, c'est l'Europe, mais qu'en fait, dans le reste du monde, la problématique est également la même, est également similaire, avec une petite différence entre la partie nord et la partie sud. La partie nord, donc l'Europe, les États-Unis sont dans cette situation. La partie sud a moins de barrières sur ces rivières, mais l'effet des barrières en construction est supérieur. Il y a un impact immédiat sur l'irrigation, sur l'agriculture notamment. Et elle mentionne 80 millions de personnes déjà déplacées pour des problèmes de ce style. Donc au niveau mondial, des petites différences, mais enfin globalement, on est bien dans une problématique assez similaire à celle qui est décrite aujourd'hui.
Okay, and lastly, I will quickly explain what the Fleurs Fund is doing. And mainly we provide funding and support to people trying to protect the rivers. We explicitly say people because whoever applies for a grant does not have to be an organization. It can be anyone, really. And the funding is as non-bureaucratically as we can do it, and is very direct and very reasonably fast to obtain. And why is that necessary? River conservation is often inherently grassroots. This means that it's often people that are somehow connected to the river that start to protect their own river. It can be kayakers, rafting companies, locals, farmers, fishers. Whoever is living where the hydropower is proposed is the first one to know and is the first one to try to fight it. This is great, but on the other hand, the people trying to protect the rivers are very often not professional activists. They have never done this. It's just random, normal people. And so they're not connected. They don't know where to start. They don't have money and they don't know how to get money. And this was the whole idea of the Fleurs Fund, because we've just been in that position. We tried to fight, or still trying with another organization, to fight hydropower projects where we live. And we realized everything costs money and we don't know where to get it. And we figured out somehow how to get it, but it took a lot more energy and time than we had in that moment. So we wanted to make it easier to whoever else is trying to do this. And that's about it. So we made it easier, and we take donations from partners, and we give out grants. People can just email us, fill out a short questionnaire, need to tell us what their problem is, what they need to be doing, and we vet them and check if they are legit, and then we can help them out.
Voilà, le FRF qui fonctionne donc avec des dons qui sont ensuite répartis par le financement de projets, avec une insistance sur l'aspect local des projets. Ce sont souvent les locaux qui s'occupent de leur propre rivière pour des motivations différentes, mais en tout cas, c'est souvent localement que ça se passe. Voilà les grands traits de cette action. The key aspects of your action was. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for this. Please.
One more. Yes. Just to finish off, the Fleurs Fund was started in 2017, and since then we have granted 59 different projects from 27 different countries on 5 continents. So we grew slowly, and this year, for example, we have 11 projects that we are funding in different ways.
11 projets cette année, donc 59 depuis 2017. Quel est le volume total du financement en euros? What is the total about the amount that it represents, roughly, in euros?
Per project?
Per what that you have financed altogether? Do you know the total amount? No?
So the grants vary. It really depends what the people need. Sometimes they just ask us for stuff worth around 500 euros. And the maximum we give out in 1 year is 2,500. So it's really small grassroots projects. And then if they grew, sometimes the problem is solved with 2,000 euros. We had projects that basically just needed a lawyer, and we paid the lawyer, and the hydropower was stopped. And sometimes we have projects for multiple years and help them to become a registered NGO and to tap into other funding. So we are more or less like the starting point for them to grow.
Des projets qui varient en taille de 500 à 2500 euros. Quelquefois, ça se passe sur une année avec l'intervention d'un avocat, par exemple. Mais quelquefois, il faut retourner au travail et recommencer l'année suivante. Donc ce sont plutôt des financements de petits projets. Generally speaking, we are talking about small, quite small, and hence local projects. Yeah. Very good. Have we got any question from the crowd? Est-ce qu'il y a par exemple des questions, des choses qui vous interpellent sur ces modalités de financement, sur ce fonctionnement? On this functioning, on this, the way this organization operates?
Bonjour, nous venons d'Albanie et nous avons, c'est-à-dire pas nous, mais toute la communauté a sauvé une rivière, la Vjosa, qui est devenue parc national. Bien que, on a résolu le problème du barrage, pas encore le problème des ordures, qui est un problème assez grave. Et par contre, il y a une deuxième rivière qui était autrefois la plus grande rivière d'Albanie, c'est le Drin noir. C'est une rivière splendide et magnifique qui, déjà, pendant la période du communisme, a connu 3 grands barrages. Et il y a actuellement, à part la dernière partie de la rivière vers la mer, il y a encore, je crois, 75 kilomètres libres de rivière qui comprennent 2 canyons géants entre le sud de la barrage du Monténégro, le barrage du Dibre et le barrage de Cours. Le problème, c'est que là, ils ont un projet pharaonique, monumental, qui fait un barrage de 400 mètres de haut. Donc 400 mètres de haut, c'est quelque chose d'immense, qui va mettre sous l'eau toute la part restante de la rivière, et qui, pour un pays petit comme l'Albanie, ça signifie pas seulement ce que vous avez montré, mais que ça signifie qu'une entière région perd le territoire. L'Albanie, c'est un pays très montagneux, donc un petit pays, faire un lac grand comme ça correspond à une perte de territoire important. Ça correspond à la perte de tout le terrain qu'on peut utiliser pour l'agriculture là-bas. Évidemment, avec des problèmes sur le microclimat local, du réchauffement, que déjà on a pas mal. Et on est intéressé à se mettre en contact parce qu'après la bonne expérience avec la Vjosa, nous souhaiterons reprendre une expérience pareille, mais la Vjosa est près de la mer, donc c'est plus facile. Là, on est un peu à l'intérieur, c'est un peu plus isolé parce qu'on pense qu'en effet, seulement amenant des gens, des touristes, des gens du sport, des gens qui sont intéressés à développer le réseau local, parce que le raft et le kayak, il y a une chose très importante à dire. Le raft amène du travail, parce qu'il y a des guides, il y a des rafts, il y a des conducteurs des fourgons qui travaillent, il y a des mécaniciens qui retapent toujours les fourgons, qui normalement ce sont des vieux bidons qui marchent, plus il y a des petits restaurants, tout ça. Donc c'est un modèle, après 40 ans d'expérience de raft, il faut dire que ce sont des expériences très soutenables au niveau local. En plus, en précédant le territoire, il y a moins d'incendies parce que les gens ils restent sur le territoire. Il y a un contrôle sur le territoire, etc., etc. Ça, vous connaissez. Merci.
Well, our friends from Albania are working alongside the Black Drin River, which is a big river in Albania that has got 3 dams already, but 75 kilometers of free flow river. And apparently there is a big dam project of over 400 meters high that will have for consequence the loss of an entire region, and also, and probably mainly, the loss of a tourism activity with kayak, with rafting, with restaurants, with all sorts of economic activities. And they are very interested in getting in touch with you to find out if there is possibility to do something together. L'idée, c'est de vous mettre en relation avec nos amis du FRF pour essayer d'engager une action qui permettent d'aller à l'encontre de ce projet.
I am very sorry I spoke in French because
That's fine.
We are in France. But anyway, we had a positive example on, I can speak in German even after with you, on the Vjosa River. And such a big monumental building, 400 meters of dam, will put underwater for a small country like Albania, as Albania, is a disaster. Yeah. So the positive way to do something is there are a local committee active, very active, but we need to bring people there because to move tourism moves the economy, and then you fight economy with economy. It's better to fight like Don Quixote and Sancho Panza against the windmill.
It sounds like you need a private meeting with this gentleman and with these ladies after the talk, after the conference. On sent bien qu'il va y avoir besoin d'une réunion entre vous là, cet après-midi pour essayer d'envisager des solutions.
Yeah, but it is. I'm happy that you experienced this and you saw the problem. And but this is sadly usually the case. It's usually the case that it literally drowns the local economy there. Like it's always people living, working, depending on the river, and these people they just get. Their livelihood is just taken from them. The beauty of the nature for the tourists is taken from the people who live from tourism. And the investors that come in and build those dams, they make promises, but in the end, the money doesn't stay in the region. There's very few jobs on hydropower plants. They get built, a lot of people make money from it, but this never ends up with the people who actually live there and have to suffer the consequences. It's a very standard, sadly.
Is this Skavica Dam? Yeah. They applied for emergency funding some years ago, I think 2 years ago or something. And we've been in touch with them. And since then, I mean, the campaign has grown quite a lot and it's getting a lot of international attention at the moment. But yeah, let's have a chat later on. Yeah.
Oui, il y a déjà eu une première esquisse d'intervention, mais j'ai l'impression qu'il faudra une deuxième intervention. Donc, et le fond connaît effectivement cette problématique. Merci pour cette intervention. Thank you very much.
It is still connected to the previous question. I actually also recommend you to maybe reach out to Bankwatch. It is an NGO based in the Balkans, and they deal with like looking at funding and the permits that are being granted to hydropower plants. And a lot of times they're kind of stopping a lot of planned construction works for hydropower as they manage to find some mistakes that are being done in the permit. So they might be already on top of it, but in case it is nice to combine action.
Thank you for this information. Donc une information sur une ONG qui se trouve dans les Balkans et qui pourrait intéresser nos amis d'Albanie, qui pourrait se faire aider par cette ONG spécialisée sur ces problèmes. Hot topic, un sujet d'actualité. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Oui.
Yeah. My question is, well, the association is to stop dams, or is it also the possibility to, let's say, request or push the persons that are providing these dams, or they want to set the dams, to respect some standards, to be more environment friendly? I don't know if my question was clear.
Oui, une petite précision sur l'objectif, c'est d'empêcher l'installation de nouveaux barrages, de vérifier que les gens qui s'installent soient régulés. So you want to know if the organization is blocking, is trying to prevent people from installing new dams, and or making sure that the regulation is applied to existing dams.
Yes, to minimize as well the impact in the environment. I don't know if this is also part of your actions.
Yeah, we are focusing on direct action concerning dams. So either preventing new dams or taking existing dams away. Although the bigger organization is dam removal there. So yeah, we've also funded a few films, for example, which are also like a bit of education, but it's happening sometimes. We are focusing on direct action. Is that answering your question? No?
The problem is that if you ask if we try to push people to buy better, greener dams, the main problem with hydropower is that there are a lot of things the developers tell us they are doing to make it more eco-friendly, like they make these little fish stairs that the fish can go up, but it's all like, I don't know the English words, but it's all just drops, and it's just cosmetic. It doesn't help that the
greenwashing.
It's greenwashing. So there are. That's what I tried to say before. There are laws in Europe, very strong laws, and they are not even adhered to. So and even if they are adhered to, then they get the proposition to build these fish things. They don't help. They maybe help one species to go in like one direction, but it doesn't work because the river is still cut off. It's still fragmented, and there's still so many other things that are interrupted because of the dam. So yeah, I'm very pressed hard to find an actually eco-friendly hydropower.
Ouais, plusieurs facettes dans l'action, effectivement. Travailler sur l'enlèvement de certaines barrières, et puis sur le fait que les gens qui construisent, les structures qui construisent des barrages respectent leurs engagements. There's a matter of respecting the engagement, but it's beaucoup de greenwashing dans les nouvelles constructions, malheureusement. Et ça, c'est aussi le rôle de l'association, de s'assurer que ce qui est prévu est bien effectué. Thank you. I think we have done a good round of questions. Thank you very much. This is a very clear presentation. C'est une présentation très claire pour tout le monde. En tout cas, on voit bien ce que fait votre ONG. It is much better, clearer in the mind of what your NGO is doing. And again, I will invite our Albanian friends to have a chat with you this afternoon. Donc nos amis albanais vont pouvoir vous rencontrer cet après-midi. Je vous remercie. Thank you very much and have a good show. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Merci. On se retrouve donc à 15h cet après-midi. We will meet again this afternoon at 3 o'clock with Scott Shipley, who just arrived, last night from the United States, to do his presentation on whitewater parks. You all know Scott Shipley because he's a former World Cup champion and